Biden's EPA requires construction projects to display campaign sign on site to access public funds. This is utterly ridiculous. It's crazy. This is basically an in-kind donation because Biden is not campaign is not really paying for this sign to show that he quote unquote Joe Biden basically paid for this project. And it's crazy that we allowing this to happen. Again, this is basically an in-kind donation because he's not paying for this. The public, the government is paying for this. And then they try to compare it to Obama when Obama had something similar to this where he had displayed a sign on projects as well. But these projects, they said it was when Obama did it, he showed that he didn't have his name on it. So it's not really comparable. They mentioned the project, but they didn't mention Obama's name. This literally says says Joe Biden on it. And then they try to say, well, it's the same thing as when when Trump signed the checks. No, that's totally different as well. When Trump signed the stimulus checks, people really don't get paper checks anymore. The majority of them was digital, so no one really paid any mind to that because we got direct deposits mostly. So you can't really compare it. Biden has a huge sign that has Joe Biden name on it, basically saying that he funded these projects, which is just crazy. So we will talk a little bit about that. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my merch store. Also, check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for news as well. All right, let's talk about this news. Now, this comes from bizpackreview.com or Business and Politics, BPR, from Melissa Fine. And she reports, remember President Biden's $1.2 trillion so-called bipartisan infrastructure law? How about the $891 billion Inflation Reduction Act for 2022? Again, y'all know how I feel about the Inflation Reduction Act. It actually increased inflation. Well, if you're a construction company that benefited from the funding through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, you are now required to display a sign on your site declaring that President Joe Biden made your project possible. Quote, for construction projects funded in whole or in part by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or Inflation Reduction Act through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, recipients must place a sign at construction sites that display the Investing in American emblem and identify the project as a, quote, project funded by President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law or project funded by President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, according to the EPA website, which again, they want his name on display. Because we know when it comes to election season, we're not going to see too many Joe Biden signs in people's yards. But the sign must be in an easily visible location that can be directly linked to the work taking place and must be maintained in good condition throughout the construction period, the agency mandates. Now, I have nothing wrong with them bragging about, this is through the Inflation Reduction Act, but putting Joe Biden's name on it is a totally different thing. But, quote, couldn't believe this, but this is actually a requirement mandated by the Biden EPA. RNC Deputy Communications Director Zach Parkinson wrote on X, in order to access these public funds, you have to basically put up the equivalent of a Biden campaign sign at the site. And that's exactly what it is. It's a campaign sign. This is, and mind you, Biden is not paying for this. This is basically an in-kind donation. Quote, you can't simply say the funding came from the IRA or the infrastructure law, he noted. You have to say it was provided by Biden. This is disgusting. So here's the actual thing on the EPA website right here so you can see yourself. Recipients must place a sign at construction sites that display the Investing in American emblem and identify the project as project funded by President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law or project funded by President Biden Inflation Reduction Act. Clearly stated. Wow. And here's a sign right here. AJ Bayatapor. I apologize, AJ. I killed your name. But he tweeted out a 6th and McKinley. I mean, at 6th and McKinley in downtown Milwaukee. These signs are already up ahead of President Biden's arrival. He'll be announcing today Milwaukee is getting $36 million to rebuild a stretch of 6th Street that connects the city's north and south sides to downtown. Look at that huge sign. His name in huge letters. And he is investing in America in small letters. Wow. I mean, this is crazy. Quote, normally you just let the bureaucrats at the EPA who sign off on this own the decision, but the Biden White House openly bragged to CNN last year that they were responsible for requiring these, Parkinson said. A staffer for the Oklahoma Waters Resource Board was asked about this requirement last year, and he added, quote, it's not in the infrastructure law. The mandate comes from the Biden OMB, or Office of Management and Budget. Wow. Just utterly ridiculous. Someone tweeted out, S. Briggs, and this was my sentiment. Isn't this against campaign laws? It is. It's an in-kind donation. It is an in-kind donation. But other users were quick to point out former President Barack Obama pulled the same thing. But look at this. Biden's name is nowhere on this. Putting America to work. Project funded by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Same play, different person. I don't mind this. I don't mind them having this. But when you put his name on it, especially during the campaign season, it's totally different. Totally different. Quote, that doesn't mention the president's name. That's what I was alluding to. Another reply, it references the legislation that made it possible and doesn't credit the president as the sole reason said legislation was passed. And I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. There is one former president who stamped his name on a program he backed, however. So this is exactly like Trump holding up the stimulus checks until they could make sure the checks had his name on them, one user said. And I mean, I can kind of see it that way, but really, it's a check. It's not a huge sign. You know what I'm saying? The stimulus checks weren't necessarily delayed to accomplish this, but as the Washington Post reported in 2020, the Treasury Department has ordered President Trump's name printed on stimulus checks. The Internal Revenue Service is rushing to send to tens of millions of Americans, a process that could slow their delivery by a few days, senior IRS officials said. The unprecedented decision finalized late Monday means that when recipients open the $1,200 paper checks, the IRS is scheduled to begin sending to 70 million Americans in coming days. President Donald J. Trump will appear on the left side of the payment. Actually, one wise user suggested the sign should read, funded by hardworking American taxes. And I definitely agree with that sentiment. But let me know what y'all think about this. Do y'all think that this is like an in-kind donation? Do you think this is much to do about nothing? Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.